So Godavari Gattupaina attempts to tell a rooted small town love story built around religion, family expectation and emotional conflict. But the film struggles badly because of weak writing, painfully slow pacing and a complete lack of chemistry between its lead pair. What should have been a heartfelt rural romance instead turns into a frustratingly bland experience that rarely feels emotionally genuine. The story follows Raju, a kind hearted auto driver, played by Sumant Prabhas, and Maya, a studious but rebellious young woman from a different religion. Their romance begins after fate brings them together, but Maya's father, Sham Babu, played by Jagapati Babu, strongly opposes the relationship. From there, the film explores whether love can survive family pressure and social expectations. On paper, the setup sounds familiar but workable. Rural romance dramas often succeed through emotional depth, grounded characters, and believable chemistry. Unfortunately, Godavari Gattupaina struggles in all three areas. The biggest issue is the screenplay by director Subhash Chandra. The film spends an enormous amount of time establishing its world and characters, but very little actually happens. Scenes after scene passes without narrative momentum, making the first half feel exhausting instead of immersive. The romance itself never develops naturally, and the progression of the love story often feels disconnected and random rather than emotionally earned. Raju, as a protagonist, is also written far too passively. Instead of driving the story forward, he mostly reacts to events happening around him. That makes the central character feel emotionally distant and uninteresting despite the potentially relatable mass hero setup. Sumant Prabhas tries to bring sincerity to the role, but the weak characterization leaves him with very little to work with. Nidhi Pradeep faces an even bigger problem as Maya. Her character is supposed to be energetic, charming, and emotionally engaging enough to carry the romance, but the writing turns her increasingly irritating as the movie progresses. Since the entire emotional core depends on the audience investing in the relationship, the lack of chemistry between the leads becomes fatal for the film. The first half especially feels directionless. Instead of building emotional stakes or creating memorable romantic moments, the movie jumps from one underwhelming scene to another while repeatedly hinting at predictable conflict involving Maya's father. There's barely enough story material to sustain the runtime, which makes the pacing feel painfully stretched. The second half continues many of the same issues, particularly when the film starts pushing its religious harmony messaging in a very focused and heavy-handed way. The emotional beats often feel manufactured rather than organic, and several dramatic moments come across as corny because of how obviously the film tries to manipulate the audience emotionally. To the movie's credit, the final portion improves somewhat. The father daughter conflict and Jagapati Babu's interaction with the hero managed to create some emotional engagement during the pre-climax and climax. None of it feels particularly fresh or surprising, but at least the film finally develops a clearer emotional direction near the end. Unfortunately, by that point, the audience has already spent too much time enduring weak romance, forced comedy, and repetitive scenes. Jagapati Babu is probably the most stable presence in the film. The role doesn't challenge him much, but he delivers the emotional material with enough sincerity to make the later scenes somewhat watchable. Supporting actors like Rajiv and Laila appear briefly and perform adequately, while the comedic portion involving the hero's friend group feel inconsistent and often try too hard to be funny. Musically, the soundtrack by Naga Vamshi is mostly forgettable, though the background score occasionally helps elevate a few emotional scenes. Technically, the cinematography is decent enough for a rural romance drama, but the editing badly needed tightening, especially during the dragging first half. Ultimately, Godari Gattupaina feels like a film built entirely around emotional familiarity without bringing anything fresh or compelling to the table. The predictable storytelling could still have worked if the romance felt authentic or the characters emotionally resonated. Instead, the film ends up feeling superficial, emotionally hollow, and frustratingly overlong. For viewers hoping for a memorable rural romance with strong emotional payoff, this one will likely feel like a missed opportunity rather than a satisfying love story. Thank you for watching. Bye.